Hello everyone, welcome to Katharine's Creatures. This is episode 50, wow. And this is a series where we get a touch base and talk about various mythological beasts, beings, and the like, pulled from lore worldwide. And I always like to preface by saying that I'm not a linguist, so if I mispronounce anything along the way, I do apologize in advance. I try, but mistakes can happen. Now with that said, today I'm going to be talking about the Ifrit, also pronounced potentially as afreet, from mythology pulled from the Islamic area. And this is essentially a powerful demon, or what has become a powerful demon, and a little more of the modern lore of the Ifrit. Originally, it was kind of associated with the underworld and spirits of the dead. The term, from the earliest known records of it, including texts like the Quran, was always used the word efreet followed by the phrase among the jinn. So originally it was kind of categorized with jinn, which we know, I guess, here in the US, because that's where I live, as kind of the genie archetype. But in modern text, it became its own independent entity of sorts. Now, with that said, again, going back, the afreet, among the jinn, is associated of haunting or lurking around ruins, desolate places, old forgotten temples, and things like that. Though technically their habitat, or where they live, is actually the underworld kind of concept. In the Quran itself, there was an afreet among the jinn that actually offered to carry the throne of Bilqis, who's also known, or maybe even better known, as the Queen of Sheba, to King Solomon. And but like I said, modern texts have kind of dropped that following phrase, so afreet or ifrit is kind of worded by themselves. It has become a class of, during its evolution, a class of, let me see if I pronounce this word correctly, chthonic spirits, which are spirits of the earth and the ground. And that's because at some point it became associated with living in the 7 layers of earth and the lore. And these creatures, though most commonly associated with a ruthlessness or wicked nature, they're not exactly evil to be evil, and we'll get to that in a moment. Some of the origin stories are that these spirits, these entities, were created out of smoke and fire. Others claim that they are evolved from God's wrath. And that makes things interesting because, going back to the concept of them not being evil inherently, it's because there's an association by some of the lore that the Ifrit they fundamentally are there to fulfill God's wishes, including they are servants to enact any vengeance that needs to be done, or any kind of avenging that needs to be done, especially if someone was murdered. So they themselves do kind of the dirty work. And because of that, they are miscategorized a lot as being evil themselves, when that's not their nature. Some of the lore will say that they can be summoned by sorcerers or people who do magic. And again, the question is, are the Afrit going to be then used for good purposes or bad? But they have been, like, lore since the Quran. They've written about, mentioned in texts like 1001 Nights, and are now kind of evolved enough where they pop up in modern mythology. One of the books I actually recently read is Neil Gaiman's American Gods. They have an Ifrit in that text as well, so these creatures still pop up in modern fantasy. If you have any questions about this or anything else, post them in the comments below, or message... Sorry, this is not a live. I have to retract that. Post them in the comments below, or reach out to me on any of my other social media platforms. I'm happy to talk with you there. And until next time, Skål.